All right, guys, we are back. This is the third episode of the Shillan and Duffy Show. We're recapping once again. We're starting to become a routine. We're becoming more frequent than a Curtis Blaydes takedown. We are recapping UFC Las Vegas 3, UFC from the Apex, UFC Blaydes versus Volkov, UFC, whatever you want to call it. With me, as always, is the senior editor of SureDog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Had a solid night of fights and lots of stuff to talk about. Just kind of lots of little stories came up between what actually happened in the fights and kind of the public and the UFC response to some of them. So pretty interesting.
Okay, cool. So we're just to change this up, pull back the curtain a little bit. Usually we tape these Sunday night based on my schedule. Tomorrow's Father's Day, different little things. We decided to do it right after the event, a little less prepared than we normally do, but we'll see how it goes. We'll give out the performance bonuses first. The fight of the night was Josh Emmett versus Shane Burgos, and the two other performance bonuses went to UFC veteran Jim Miller and UFC newcomer Justin James. So one guy made his debut. The other guy is continuing to extend his record of most appearances in UFC. They both got much richer. So let's go right to the main event. Heavyweight clash between two Goliaths. Curtis Razor Blaydes, Alexander Volkov. Curtis Razor Blaydes absolutely blanked Volkov over 25 minutes. It was a one-sided event. Curtis Blaydes set the record for most takedowns in a heavyweight matchup. This you know how you envision a fight, it usually doesn't happen that way. Is there anybody who didn't envision the fight going exactly this way? I mean, Curtis Blaydes was a huge, massive favorite. I'm in one of these survivor pools where you pick a fighter, and if they win, you stay in the pool. And we started with 3, and then if you lose 1, you get down to 2, and if you lose 2, you're down to 1, whatever. And one of my 2 picks, I'm done. I have 2 left. I picked Curtis Blaydes, and I think everybody took Curtis Blaydes. And now we see why. Alexander Volkov, had no match for Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes was a terrible stylistic matchup. Did you envision this fight going any other way than what happened?
No, I really didn't. The dynamic was exactly what everybody kind of expected it would be. The only questions were in the details. Would Blaydes take him down effortlessly and then just pound him out? Or was it going to be a rinse and repeat like it turned out to be? And if it did, was cardio going to become a problem at some point? Like, was Volkov going to get a chance to get back into this if Blaydes wore himself out, basically slamming him all over the place? I mean, those were the only questions. But the main dynamic that Blaydes got the takedown whenever he wanted, basically, was as everybody probably expected.
Yeah, so Curtis Blaydes is a guy that since, we've seen almost his entire career unfold in the UFC. Some things that when I think about Curtis Blaydes, some things stand out to me. When I think about the UFC heavyweight division or just the heavyweight division in general, generally speaking, about 245 is about the top, of the limit where the top guys are, and then it's kind of down. So you think about the all-time greats. The first guy that comes to my mind is Randy Couture. He's a former light heavyweight. Daniel Cormier, another one, former lightweight. Fedor Emelianenko is a guy who probably could have made it to light heavyweight. Mirko Krokop is another guy that probably could have fought at light heavyweight. Even the guys that start getting bigger, Cain Velasquez, Stipe, none of them were massives. Other than Brock Lesnar, Frank Mir at the end of his career, there wasn't guys tipping the scales. But Curtis Blaydes, one of these guys, he actually has to cut to make the weight class. I think this was one of the he weighed as 261. I mean, just 4 pounds under the limit. He's huge, but he's not slow, and that's the first thing that jumps out at Curtis Blaydes. Usually, when you have this huge guy, they're usually slow. You have like the Tim Sylvia lumbering kind of guy. That's not Curtis Blaydes. He's athletic. He sets up his takedowns well. When you think of Curtis Blaydes, what's the thing that jumps out to you?
If my thing is, if you look at Curtis Blaydes, just if he's in a picture without anyone standing near him to put his size into perspective, you'd be like, that guy's probably a middleweight. He doesn't have the hulking heavyweight build, even though he is a gigantic dude. Like, you look at him just kind of through the arms, shoulders, and chest, he looks like a regular sized guy that's just been kind of sized up, like someone put him in Photoshop and hit 120% size and just grew him. And the thing is, in most of his fights, he weighs in around 250, even a little under. I think his last fight, he weighed in at 247 or something like that.
Well, I didn't even know that. I didn't realize it was that low.
He's almost 15 pounds heavier than usual. He looked it. He had a little bit around the middle that he usually does not. And so as soon as the fight started and he put Volkov on the takedown train, my thought was, is his cardio going to be affected? Because he's also a guy that's been vocal about his opportunities for the kind of training that he is used to being limited kind of since COVID shut so much of the world down. And that did come to pass. He got tired first. He was extremely tired by the end. Now, fortunately, his wrestling is so much better that even tired, he was still landing the majority of his takedowns. But Blaydes, to me, reminds me of prime Frank Mir, like not in terms of the specifics of their game, but in that they are a big guy with small guy athleticism.
Yeah, no, I like Curtis Blaydes. I like his skills. The guy that really jumps out to me is Cain Velasquez. No, not necessarily the cardio sense, which comes with Cain, but a guy that comes from a wrestling background will go to the wrestling early. And then also Curtis Blaydes has really made improvements. When he stood up with Volkov, they're very small portions in the fight where he stood up with him, but he did very well. Especially when he opened up the second round, he was landing shots. He did the same thing to start the third round. But the thing that I'm really impressed with Curtis Blaydes is he knows what he's good at and he doesn't abandon it. He says, I have this huge advantage here. I'm just going to take the safe route. I'll work the guy for 25 minutes. I can wrestle for 25 minutes. He's not going to be able to take down, and I'm going to get the win. And that's not going to win him over many fans, but it's going to win him a lot of fights. And he's okay with that. Tim Sylvia was okay with that. Remember when Tim Sylvia was a champion and he learned to just jab and back up, and he was taller than the guys and they couldn't get past his jab. And I remember when he fought Jeff Munson, it was one of the most frustrating fights in history of just watching this. But I think this is good because a lot of times I feel like wrestlers, when they start falling in love with their hands, it actually makes them worse. Like there was a time where Dan Henderson was so in love with his right hand, he was getting out-wrestled by guys worse than him. He was losing matches to like Kazuo Misaki because all he was looking to do was the same right hand over and over again. I thought Josh Koscheck at one time kind of abandoned his wrestling, and Johnny Hendricks, and we can go on and on. The list goes on and on. And it's like that new toy. Like you got the new toy, you kind of throw the old toy aside. But when you look at Curtis Blaydes, he's already lost to Francis Ngannou twice. Do you see a champion one day that you think this guy could? Because I do. I see the champion ability. You know,
I think it would have really been in his best interest if he'd been able to just wipe the floor with Volkov tonight and finish him inside of 2 rounds, because nobody's going to want to see Blaydes Ngannou 3 unless Blaydes gets to a title first. That's the only way that fight's going to get made, is if Blaydes has the belt and Ngannou needs to come get it. If Ngannou gets the title first, Blaydes will literally have to beat everybody else in the top 10 in order for anybody to want to see that again, which is a shame because I'd be happy to see a third fight between them. I would like to see if Blaydes can make some adjustments. Because the thing is, he's gotten clocked and just completely flatlined twice by Ngannou. Really too quickly to put Ngannou's takedown defense to the test. So while I've learned that he has Blaydes' number, it hasn't really answered the questions that anybody still has about Ngannou. And like I say, we're not going to get to see it unless there are some really extenuating circumstances or Blaydes manages to get the title first.
Yeah, I said a couple of things. So he wasn't able to get Volkov out. I think a lot of that has to do with Volkov. I think his long legs obviously keeps him in a different striking range on the ground that most heavyweights can't have. He's super tough. He's smart on the ground. So I think that was one of the reasons. As far as I totally understand what you're talking about with Ngannou. Curtis Blaydes is in that Joseph Benavidez stage where you lost Ngannou's not the champion, but if he becomes the champion, then you have 2 losses to the champion. But it's funny that I said this every single time I've seen Curtis Blaydes fight, he's lost to Nagano twice. And if they fought again right now, I don't know if I'm picking against him, because I think of this when I think of what Stipe did to Nagano, I'm like, Curtis Blaydes could do that, but he's already lost to it twice. It doesn't make any sense. But he has the skill set to win.
Yep.
So let's do this. Right now, Curtis Blaydes, it seems like he's number 3 in line. You have DC, the trilogy, then you probably have Nagano, and then you have him. He says he doesn't want to fight anybody. I didn't get a chance to watch the post-fight shows. I had some personal things I had to finish, so as soon as the fight ended, I had to jet and I had to get home to do this show. Did he say anything about? Because he said before that he'll sit out. He wants a title shot after this.
And I haven't heard any more about that, but the responses I was seeing to the UFC post-fight press conference made it sound as though Dana was not being too kind to Blaydes. This has been a night for Dana to complain when, the fights aren't quite as exciting as they could be. So I can't imagine he'll be leapfrogging Ngannou to get that next title shot. And in fairness, shouldn't. I mean, he's lost to the guy twice. So even if it would be better for the overall structure of the division, I think Ngannou's going to get the next title shot. And Blaydes is either going to have to wait his turn or fight somebody else. And I don't even know who else he would fight, because anyone he fought would be a substantial step down from him in terms of rankings. He has beaten so many of the other fighters in and around the top 10. I mean, JDS beat him. Overeem beat him. Olenek beat him. If you book him another fight.
I'm literally, I'm trying to think. So maybe if Derek Lewis beats Olenek, that's a matchup they haven't done.
Sure.
And if you want to be Curtis Blaydes just to stay active, that's such a good stylistic matchup for Curtis Blaydes that you say,
sure.
Hey, I just want to get a paycheck. I can just take him down, rinse and repeat. Kind of do what DC did to Lewis. I think that would be good. And he might have to, because of some of the things you said, that he's not jumping the line. You figure DC and Stipe's fighting in August. The winner, which if DC wins, he's saying he's retiring, which I actually believe that's going to happen. He's been talking about retiring for a while. But if, say Stipe wins, Stipe comes back, he's a guy who's been hard to negotiate with the UFC, so who knows if that holds things up. He also has that firefighter job on the side. Or no, I shouldn't say on the side. You don't have, but also. And so you figure August, DC, and Stipe, quickest turnaround, November, December-ish.
At the very best.
Yeah, that's no injuries. You want to get back in there. And then same thing, perfect scenario again where no one gets hurt. You're looking at March, probably more April. So, and then realistically, you could be looking a year from now. June, a year from now. Does he want to sit on the shelf for a year, not collect any checks? I don't know.
If he wants to collect a check, he's going to have to fight somebody that's basically not a great risk-reward equation, because it's going to be somebody ranked lower than him, but it's still heavyweight, so everybody's dangerous. But
yeah. Even though I think Derek Lewis is a terrible style. I mean, he's a terrible stylistic matchup for Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis also has crazy power, and if he catches you, that could be the end of the fight. And we've seen Curtis Blaydes get hurt.
We've seen Curtis Blaydes be hurt, and while I would favor Blaydes heavily over Lewis, especially at this point in their respective careers, Lewis might be the only other guy at heavyweight that has the same sort of one punch power that Ngannou has, to put a guy down.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And then there's really no one else. If say Lewis loses, he fought Olenek recently. He's fought JDS was his last fight before this one. There's not a lot of guys that Overeem he's gone against. They train together, I really don't know what to do. Now, if DC retires and the belt becomes vacant, based on the UFC would be in such a tough situation because Stipe would be coming off a loss. He would have lost 2 out of the last 3. Now Nagano would make sense. Would you throw him in the vacant title picture? But then who do you put him against? Do you put him against Curtis Blaydes, who he's beat twice? Do you put him against Stipe, who now would have lost 2 out of 3 and has a win over the guy? Like, there's nothing sexy.
It's not Stipe. Like the way
and all the I know you got to go with
in light of how vocal he's been about the whole pay thing and just about everything the UFC's been doing kind of over the last couple months. They're not doing him any favors. I'd say they probably do make it Ngannou versus Blaydes for the vacant title, and they just do their best with the hype machine to show, hey, this is what Blaydes has done since the last time the two guys have fought. And again, I'm with you. I want to see the third fight. Like, I actually think Blaydes would have a good chance in that.
I do too.
I don't know if I'd favor him, but I'd bet against it being just another 60-second flattening.
Yeah, I don't gamble, but I would imagine the betting lines would have Nagano like really obscure than what he should be, and that would actually want me to bet for Curtis Blaydes if he came in as this, plus 400, at being that he's got knocked out twice by the same guy.
Right.
But if DC, so I don't want to go down too far in the rabbit hole because we're supposed to be talking about Curtis Blaydes, but I just want to talk about the title picture altogether because there's not too much to talk about this fight. But if DC wins and retires with the belt, we both agree that Nagano is in the title picture. There is another possibility that could happen, and it makes a lot more sense under this circumstances. It's time for John Jones. John Jones, they've had a little, back and forth with Nagano. Now, of course, we were just talking about negotiation issues with Stipe. John Jones is also in the same boat. So, I'm saying best case scenario, but it could be John Jones, which goes back to the thing about Curtis Blaydes. He's sitting on the sidelines. What if John Jones ain't gonna wait? John Jones moves up to heavyweight. He's getting a title shot if he wants it. If he wants it, and he's jumping the line for Curtis Blaydes. The win tonight, this might have John pitched him a little bit.
Yeah, he could have done himself some favors tonight, and beyond just surviving and advancing, he did not do himself those favors.
And this is after absolutely dominating Volkov, one of the top heavyweights in the world for 25 minutes, blanked him on all the scorecards. There could have been 10-8 rounds in there. Like there's, and still, he might have somehow went down. So we've already said what we could do with Blaydes. We threw a lot of options out there, though we don't seem too happy with any of them. Where does Volkov go from here? Because he's in another tough situation. He's fought a lot of guys. I think maybe Overeem. Do an Overeem matchup. What are you thinking?
Could be Overeem if he wants or needs to wait at all. I'd be fine with him taking the loser of Junior Dos Santos and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I'd be fine with him. I don't know if he'd take a fight with Walt Harris. I think he's still going to be ranked a good ways ahead of him. I mean, there are interesting things for him.
Don't put him against a wrestler, that's for sure. Like don't put him against Cain Velasquez and Velasquez return fight or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
I'm only kidding. We
know
know
he's
never good.
Yeah.
So we don't seem too pleased with the prospects of either matchup, but some matchup that we have to be absolutely pleased with was the fight of the night, the co-main event. Josh Emmett, Shane Burgos. It was one of those fights that seemed like everybody was excited about. It was the fight that most people were hyped up about, and this one absolutely lived up to the hype. It could be a candidate for fight of the year. I was floored by this fight. I don't know what to say. Like this fight had everything you wanted. There was some knockdowns late, a little injury early, back and forth. To me, it came down to Shane Burgos' chin versus Josh Emmett's legs and body, and which one was going to fail first.
That's a pretty good way to sum it up. Same as you did, I did pick Emmett in this one. For those listening who don't know, in the Sherdog staff pick'em lead, he is currently 2nd out of 16. I am 4th out of 16. But we picked.
Whoa. Okay, I got to jump in for 1 second.
Okay.
If you're going to update the Sherdog, you got to remember that I'm the reigning champion.
The defending champ,
all right, guys,
Keith Shillan, is
carry on, Mr. Duffy,
within shooting distance of repeating as champion. So he is currently in 2nd. I'm in 4th. There wasn't going to be any movement tonight because the top 5 guys in the standings all picked the fights exactly the same. But
which is surprising.
Let me know if you feel differently about this. But for me, out of all the fights I picked, this is the one that I felt least secure about. Like if I did confidence picks, this would have been one of my lowest confidence picks. Yeah, Burgos was a slight favorite on the, very slight favorite on the odds. He was a very slight favorite in the pick'em. I think it was 56% Burgos, 44% Emmett. And this was the one out of all my picks that I was like, this might make me feel real stupid within about 3 minutes. And sure enough, about a minute in, when Emmett, clearly his knee was bothering him, I was like, oh man, I am doomed. Like, Burgos is just going to kick that leg until Emmett can barely stand anymore. Then he's going to take him down and choke him out or armbar him or something. But no, it was fantastic. Just a super gritty performance from both guys. Emmett, clearly his knee hurt him. He made adjustments and was able to still throw effective offense on the feet, was able to still plant, still pivot. I mean, he was throwing that fastball with the right hand so many times. And then an incredibly tough performance from Burgos as well. Burgos ate at least a dozen overhand rights from Emmett, probably at least 5 or 6 of them, not even partially blocked by his high guard, that are the same punches that Emmett has been one-shotting other people with. So it answered questions about both guys. It's always a cliche to say that there's a fight where there were no losers, because clearly somebody lost and somebody's going to move up the rankings and someone's going to move down on Monday. But Burgos definitely did not hurt his stock here at all. And they're both young guys, but Burgos is younger, so he's got plenty of time to bounce back from this and be back in the title picture.
Yeah, so let's. This is what I want to do with this fight. I want to break it in 3 sections. I want to talk about the actual fight, then I want to talk about each fight as individually.
Okay.
So the actual fight, absolutely fantastic. That said, I feel like Burgos is his own worst enemy. He is so. I don't know if I'm talking about the fight. So I want to talk about the specific fight, but I also want to talk about him as a fighter. He is so skilled offensively. The way he works the body, kicks, he walks right through punches, but he just abandons the defense. His whole defense is slipping a little bit, keeping himself in range, which a lot of people do, and it's very effective, and it's what opens up your offense by slipping and keeping yourself in range. But there's times where he just doesn't even care, and you're gonna trust your chin. And I was like, man, dude, if you had any kind of defense, you probably win this fight. So what was your take on this fight? Like, what was the difference to you, and why? I mean, obviously the power of Emmett came through, but is anything really jumps out? Yeah, go ahead.
The power of Emmett. That's it. I was surprised at how many times he landed that heater. Because when he came out and he threw the right overhand with just all the gas he could put on it 2 or 3 times in the first half of a round, I was like, well, this is not sustainable. Either he's going to land one of these and Burgos is going to be out and this thing will be over, or he's going to get tired, because that takes a lot out of you. Throwing an overhand as hard as you can is one of the more tiring things you can do on the feet, or Burgos is going to time him and start making him pay for it. None of those things happened. He didn't knock him out. Burgos never figured it out, and he never appeared to get tired. But even if he didn't manage to knock Burgos out, he definitely did damage. It won him rounds, and when he switched it up with the left in the 3rd round, that started catching him off guard as well, and that put him down. I agree with your assessment of Burgos in terms of his defense on the feet, and you see that on a more detailed level than I do, but I am surprised at the range at which he seems to choose and prefer to fight for a guy that is built like he is.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't do a lot of out game. He likes that mid-range game.
Right.
Which is crazy because he is so big. And he was fighting in that mid-range, which was shorter Emmett. You're actually fighting in Emmett's range.
That was gonna be what I was gonna say.
Sorry,
he's a long and lanky dude. He definitely was at 145. Still is a pretty long guy at 155. I mean, he's listed at 5'11", but he feels like, when you see his frame, he feels like a tall fighter. And he's fighting at really the only range where Emmett can easily tag him with those punches. And I'm not saying he needs to change that because he's been a fighter for a long time. That's a complete retooling of your stand-up game. And he's been with Tiger Schulman since he was a kid. But it is surprising to me. Every time Burgos fights, I'm surprised at kind of the range that he dictates or allows to be dictated to him on the feet. It doesn't seem to be to his best advantage. And it's not the same as just a giant tall guy who can't keep people off him. It's not Stefan Struve.
Yeah. He understands range and he uses it, but I don't know. He loves the firefight. He wants a war. He loves the battle, and he's got this insane confidence. Where, so some of the things that stood out to me. So you were saying something, and it was funny because one of my notes was, what surprised you more, Burgos' ability to take the punches, or Emmett's ability to continue to throw the punches? Like he didn't slow. Because that was one thing. Like, oh well, Emmett early, Burgos late, and Emmett was hurting Burgos late. Emmett. I had it 1-1 heading into the third round, and then Emmett was, landing the shots that was putting out. One thing, so many things, I was like, I don't know if I'm living in the moment, but I'm like through the roof on Josh Emmett right now. One thing about Josh Emmett, I was saying he was falling in love with his right hand, and that always bothers me. And that guys kind of load up, but he doesn't. He just has this insane power that he throws them quick and short, and he almost. Listen, I'm not comparing him to this guy before I get like burned a steak, but he has this Tyson-esque feel where he gets his whole body into every punch, but he's not loading and telegraphing. And I thought he showed improved speed that I didn't see before. I don't know if you remember this. He did something absolutely brilliant in the third round. It's when it was the left hook that dropped Burgos. It was the second time Burgos got dropped, but it was actually the left hook, and the commentator went crazy. I was like, it wasn't his right, it was his left. He did this thing that was awesome. They were exchanging, and then he stepped back with his hands down, and he was like stepping back, like looking like he was going to like reset. Like they kept doing it. They explored and then had reset. And he looked back like almost distracted, like, all right, I'm going to reset now. Like we're both taking a break. And instead of resetting, he dropped his hands and leaped a left hook from his waist. But because it was so out of routine, it was so out of rhythm, it landed so flush. And to have those types of, without showing the triggers, without showing the signs, that's stuff like O'Malley. That's what we were talking about. O'Malley, that freaks me out. Guy that was so good at this was Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson would always be changing something up, like something like he had so many levels to his game, or he could just like he's like jumping chapters, jumping levels, and that's something I saw in Emmett. And I was like, dude, that was brilliant. That was the thing that jumped out at me. Now, Josh Emmett reminds me of a guy that I've always thought was been drastically underrated. I always thought he should be on the list of one of the greatest fighters who never won a title. He reminds me a lot of his old teammate Chad Mendes. He has those power hooks. I just wish he would add more of the wrestling game. And when I was watching this fight, I was saying, why doesn't Emmett shoot to one? If he gets a takedown, great, but not. He can also get inside, and then he can throw those hooks off the break where Burgos can't, especially when his knee was hurt, and Burgos can't respond with the leg kicks because he's crowded him, and also would force Burgos to fight off his back foot. Now, Emmett was doing so things, and the fact that he could press that pace and have that crushing power for 15 minutes. I'm going to say something that's going to sound blasphemous, and I'm not saying that he should get the next title shot. I'm not saying he would win, but I am more intrigued with a Josh Emmett Alexander Volkanovski fight than Volkanovski versus Holloway 2. Like if I could pick right now, I'd rather see Emmett.
I want to see Emmett get a title shot at some point. It's hard for me to justify it with the number of people who are kind of ahead of him in line.
Yeah, and that Stevens loss hurts him.
The Stevens loss hurts him, and that sucks because he was beating Stevens. He got caught with one huge shot, which fair play put him down.
Sure.
Might have got caught with an illegal knee on the ground and then put away. And Stevens, whatever his flaws, is, a hard hitter and is a finisher if you give him an opening. But yeah, that's one that it's hurting him right now. And a couple of years from now, depending on what he does, we may look back at that as just one of the kind of weirdest freak outcomes ever. But yeah, he was doing just fine against Stevens, got caught with a huge shot, fair play. It was a loss, but yeah, there's so many guys ahead of him. The thing about Emmett is he seems like a young guy. He fights like a young guy, like just his reflexes and cardio are fantastic. He's 36. He was already 30 when he got to the UFC. He was already like 27 or so when he really started fighting seriously. I think he had one or two fights like when he was much younger, but then like only really started to fight seriously like when he was already approaching 30. So he's 36. The things
he's only
are
35. He's 35.
35. Okay, yeah. Thank you. At some point, some of the physical attributes that he has are going to start to decline. I definitely want to see what he's able to do before that happens.
Yeah. So I think he's definitely added a technical aspect to his game, but there is still that raw natural speed and power. And if that declines, that changes his game drastically. And we know that guys drop so quickly over a certain age. The other thing we haven't even talked about yet is he may have a serious knee injury now. They talked about it on the broadcast. He had extended it. They were talking about possible ACL. I'm saying this is way too early to tell, but if that is the case and he's out for another year, then he is 36. And now he had, the major injury, the brain injury in the eye with Jeremy Stevens, comes back, gets a knee injury. That doesn't help. But this is why I want him fast-tracked, because if Max Holloway was still the champion, I don't know if I would really want to see Josh Emmett in it yet. But just the styles of Volkanovski and Emmett to me was just that forward pressure speed of Volkanovski, and then having someone who could actually match his speed and match his power and match his athleticism. That's why I'm so intrigued with that match. Like if Holloway beats Volkanovski, I want Volkanovski and Emmett. If Holloway beats him.
I like that just fine. And it's also interesting because Volkanovski and Emmett have such a similar build physically, but they do different things with it.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about how you wish Emmett would, use his wrestling a little more. Volkanovski's built about the same. And I mean, he wants to feed you kicks. He doesn't mind clinching with you and kind of like bullying you around on the fence some. It'd be interesting to kind of see those two guys that physically are almost mirror images.
Yeah.
Show the two different kind of stylistic trees that can sprout from that same trunk. But man, yeah, I want to see him get a shot at a title, but it would be just not justifiable to fast track
of course not. Yeah,
ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, you got Holloway, you got the Korean Zombie, you got Yair Rodriguez. I mean, these guys all are higher ranked than him, got better wins than him. I just think of some of the things you were talking about. So one thing, I talked to Josh Emmett. I interviewed him for the MMA Takeover show. This past episode he was on it. And I asked him specifically about his wrestling. Like, hey, dude, you come from a wrestling background. Like, how come we don't see you wrestle more? And he flat out said, well, dude, wrestling's hard. And I get what he's saying. Like, grinding and wrestling is hard. And I totally understand. But another reason when I think about the Volkanovski fight is I earlier compared him to Chad Mendes. Well, let's not forget, Chad Mendes almost knocked Volkanovski out. Chad Mendes did better against Volkanovski than Max Holloway did. Yep. He obviously got caught in an injury and got knocked out of there late, but he was doing very well. And that was a fun scrap between those two. And that was the one that kind of really opened the eyes of Volkanovski to people when he took out Chad Mendes. Guys, we're going to get to the prelims. We knew that these two fights, specifically, I had a feeling that we were going to talk about Emmett and Burgos. I had a feeling that was going to steal the majority of our time. I want to move over to Shane Burgos real quick before we do some matchmaking. Shane Burgos, so I'm going to say the good and the bad from this fight. Shane Burgos has the same mindset of John Jones. So what I mean by that is John Jones isn't a round winner. He is a fight winner where he is looking to do damage over rounds where that'll take you out at some point. Like he doesn't look at it as in like 5 rounds or 3 rounds. He looks at it as one whole thing. And
that much time to find a way to finish you.
Yeah, like I have to land 100 punches, and the 100th punch was like, if you had an energy meter, I got to get that energy meter down. Instead of like I have to win 3 out of these 5 or whatever. And Burgos has the same thing. Like he picks up the pace at certain times. He works the body. He works the kicks. Like this stuff is so good. And other guys would have folded. Other guys would have crumbled where Josh Emmett did it. The thing that really disturbs me, we already talked about the defense, but now is, yeah, his chin held up, but we've seen guys take tons of damage. Their chin holds up, and suddenly the chin don't hold up anymore. You can't take 50 power hooks and overhand rights from Josh Emmett and think that's not going to do damage later on. Like that's not like you only have so many rings of the bell. Does that bother you at all? Like it bothered me a lot.
Well, it makes me concerned for him. Sure, I mean, if it bothered me too much, I would watch a different sport. But
I mean, no, I didn't mean like that.
No,
I mean, rather like
it is by far the most punishment he has taken in any of his fights. Like he lost to Calvin Kattar a couple of years ago, and even though he actually got TKO'd in that fight, I don't think he took as many hard, clean shots to the dome, like not even close. So it's always worrisome. He's 29. We've already kind of talked about how he has a unique style on the feet for someone of his build. If it turns into something where as he crosses over into his 30s, his reflexes slow just a tick, and all of a sudden he's getting nailed, like everybody's nailing him like Emmett did tonight, and it's just not sustainable, then obviously in hindsight I'll be like, I should have been more concerned.
Yeah.
But until I see him in his next fight, I'm inclined to think this is just an aberration. We're getting so many fight results right now that we don't know how well each of these fighters have been able to really train. Are we seeing the best version of both of these fighters? And I'm sure we'll get to that in some of the other fights on this card. So the results count. If you lost, you lost. If you won, you won. If you got your chance in the UFC, getting called up on short notice, maybe you were able to take best advantage of it. But there's always that question. Like, will this just turn out to be a one-time aberration in Burgos' career, or is this a sign that he's on his way down? Which feels weird to say about a 29-year-old guy.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned about is what's going on. Can we see the best of a fighter fighting in, a pandemic? Let's not forget that Shane Burgos trains in New York City. It's like the mecca of the pandemic where,
yep.
So yeah, it might have been very difficult on him to do that. When I was watching Burgos, this thing, when I was watching him keeping his hands low and relying so much on rolling with the punches and getting great shots, he is what Bobby Green wants to be. Like he is if Bobby Green is like Shredder, then Burgos is like in Teenage Mutant 2 when he gets the ooze on him and he becomes the ultimate Shredder. Like that's Burgos. Like he's the ultimate Bobby Green. Anyways, let's do some matchmaking with these guys real quick. We said this before when we talked about 145, especially near the top, anywhere between number 1 and number 15, 18, 20, wherever. It's not a division that's hard to match. Like we did this a couple of weeks ago with Calvin Kattar. We said, would you put him against this guy? And we're like, sounds good to me. How about this guy? Sounds good to me. I feel the same way about Josh Emmett. Like, if I have to pick one, I'm going to go with Kattar. I think it'd be fun to see Emmett's power and speed match up against just Kattar's precision, Kattar's length. That fight would be fantastic. But whoever you say, I'm going to agree with. I'm good with that fight too.
Well, I was actually going in the direction of Cater just because he and Dan Ige are fighting on Fight Island in a couple of weeks. You want winner to go with Emmett, loser to go with because
I literally wrote Cater Ige winner, and I just have Cater winning that I just completely forgot. I wrote it down here: Cater / Ige winner.
Because suppose Ige beats Cater. Cater rematching with Shane Burgos would not be the worst thing in the world for me. That first fight was great. If Cater wins, like you, I'd be happy to see him take on Emmett.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to see Ige versus Emmett. That would be dynamite.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Ige will stand in the phone booth with him and trade.
I think Emmett would put him out. But yeah. I mean, I it's probably because I'm taking Cater to win that fight. I think Cater's not getting Ige out. But I'm also a Boston guy. Cater's from the area, so I can't go against my Boston people. Though I do it all the time. Burgos. This happens to me a lot when I like somebody and I think they have a lot of skill. I want to put them in a matchup that makes sense, but also a matchup that I think they win. To kind of get them back if they're coming off a loss. Like I don't want to see Burgos lose two in a row, but obviously I can't give them a softball. So no. I say Andre Fili.
That works for me.
Is it just because 145 no matter what? It's just easy to do. Is that just?
It is easy to do, and it's a division that in this kind of weird time right now is getting a lot of fights, either people fighting at 145 or 145ers taking a fight at 155. So there's kind of lots of names on the tip of your tongue, but I'd absolutely take that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great division. Anyway, 135 to 170 is just so great. Speaking of a great division, when we think of great division, we think of the women's bantamweight division, which saw the matchup that everybody was dying to see: Raquel Pennington versus Marion Renaud. Unfortunately, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, I missed this fight. I had something going on personally. I had to sacrifice a main card fight to the gods, and I sacrificed this one. I will watch it sometime tomorrow. I would have watched it if we taped this Sunday night instead of Saturday night, but I didn't catch a single second of this fight. So tell me how it went, and tell me what your thoughts of Raquel Pennington, Marion Renaud.
It was a pretty good fight. It was about as much fun as I've had watching Raquel Pennington win a fight in a few years. And that sounds like I'm being insulting. That's terrible. I don't mean it that way. But normally when Pennington wins a fight, she's a grinder. And when she loses a fight, sometimes she gets zapped spectacularly. Renaud, if she didn't win the first round, came really close to winning the first round. For a woman who turned 43 today, she is a physical specimen. Because the thing about Raquel Pennington is, obviously she's run into a rough patch in the last year or two where she got the title shot against Nunes and took one of the worst beatings in MMA history. Then, Deirandami, Aldana, and Holmes, she lost 3 or 4 fights. But before that, she was generally the bully in her fights. She was generally the physically stronger fighter who could, force the clinch on people who wanted space, get takedowns out of the clinch if she wanted, and just was generally the bully. And she returned to that in this fight. After the first round in particular, the first round could have gone either way depending on what you think, but second and third were just classic Raquel Pennington. Renaud couldn't keep her off of her. Pennington was clearly the stronger woman. As the fight wore on, she was the fresher woman as well, because generally speaking, if you're dominating the clinch and grappling exchanges, you're getting tired slower than the other person. So, by the end of the fight, she was definitely starting to kind of roll downhill. Who knows if it had been a 5-round fight, or I know that's not that's a fallacy to say if it were a 5-round fight, because obviously they would have fought differently. But if someone just said, hey, surprise, 2 more rounds, Pennington probably gets the finish.
Okay.
So one of her best performances in a while. She is kind of in the Curtis Blaydes spot where she hasn't lost twice to Nunes, but Nunes, it feels like she went about 11-0 against her in one. In the sense that nobody wants to see that again unless some really extenuating things happen. So
she beat her for 4 rounds. She quit, and then she beat her again in the 5th round.
Yeah.
So we'll say that she has 2. Yeah. So like when you get the matchmaking, that division 1 is so shallow. 2 is someone that no one wants to see fight for the title. It is. She's fought like Holly Holm twice. Like it's a really hard to matchmake her next, and all she's kind of doing is taking out other contenders and taking out other. There's not a lot of options for Amanda Nunes, and having Raquel Pennington beat them. Like that's just tough. Like that's a girl that she'd be better if she went to Bellator.
She would.
I mean, Bellator doesn't have a 135-pound division, but generally, I'm saying like she went somewhere else.
And they were bringing people in expectation of having one when all this happened.
Well, yeah, Bellator does that. Like they'll have atom weights, but not have an atom weight division. They have 115 with just Kerry Melendez. Like they don't know what they're doing. But that's okay. Sometimes it's okay just to have matches.
Sure.
Let's move on because I have nothing to add to this fight because I didn't see it. But I will watch it. I have this rule. I've watched every single UFC fight. I've never missed a single UFC fight. So I will watch it tomorrow. Even sometimes I've had to rewatch fights that people are like, please do not watch this fight, but I have to watch it anyways.
This one's not bad.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good to know. Before that was a fight that I was thrilled with from the technical aspect. You guys know I love the technical breakdown, and Belal Muhammad is really fun to watch. When I watch Belal Muhammad, 2 things that really jump out to me. I just go, this guy puts his work in the gym. You can tell he loves the sport. He puts his work in. And 2, his fight IQ is so high. What I mean by that, so Belal Muhammad beat Lyman Good. He won by unanimous decision. All 3 judges had it 29-28 for Belal Muhammad. To me, he did 3 really good things. He either was feinting, forcing Lyman Good to basically, when you feint a lot, you either get them leaning one way or the other way. You kind of can read what they're going to do when you throw it, or someone who likes to counter strike, which what happened is Lyman Good, he was trying to do what Chris Cyborg does. And what I call them pressure counter strikers, where they press you forward, but they want you to throw at you first so they can counter. That's what Lyman Good does. What Belal Muhammad was doing was feinting, forcing Muhammad to open up with that counter strike, and then he was responding with a quicker combination. And Lyman Good was like almost freezing by throwing 1 punch, and Belal Muhammad would respond with 2 or 3 punches. The second thing he was doing, if he wasn't feinting, because this is what I loved about it, because he wasn't just one game plan. He had 2 or 3 game plans going, and he was switching back and forth between all of them. And it was fantastic to watch. The other thing he was doing, he was using so much lateral movement. Lyman Good was very flat-footed, not cutting off the cage, but following him. And what he was doing, and Dominic Cruz pointed this out, and I've always said Dominic Cruz is so good in the technical aspect, is he was pulling him into his power. He would chase, and he would stop on his back foot, and then he would explode to the spot that he knows Lyman Good's going to step to, because Lyman Good is following. The person who's so good, a perfect fight to see someone do this is Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Jessica Andrade. When they fought, Joanna was back in, and then boom, she beat it to the spot. And Belal Muhammad did that. And then the third thing that he did that I really loved was that every once in a while he would threaten with a takedown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. And he wasn't doing it. Some guys, like, you get hit with a strike, I'll go with a takedown now. He just would mix it in just to keep you guessing. And, or break up Good's rhythm, or just whatever. I love watching. Belal Muhammad is not that good of an athlete, but he's got such a big fight IQ that he's one of these guys where he's got a little bit of talent, but he stretches that as far as he possibly can. And I don't know. I mean, like, it's admirable.
It's extremely. And I mean, I'm not like Muhammad. He's a fit guy and he's a good athlete. So I'm not saying he's like Roy Nelson or some shit. But if you lined up him and Lyman Good, before the fight, and to show that picture to somebody who doesn't watch fights, you're like, well, how are these guys even allowed to fight? This dude, I agree with you about the footwork battle. I mean, it's not even game planning. It's just basic striking fundamentals. Like, one thing I look for as soon as a fight starts, if it's clear that one guy wants to come forward and the other guy wants to give ground, it is the guy who's giving ground letting himself be walked into the cage? And Muhammad never did. Great lateral movement, great anticipation, because like you said, he figured out pretty quickly that Good was just plodding right after him, which is kind of interesting considering how much of Good's game is predicated on wanting to mash you into the cage. But you'd think he would have gotten better at cutting it off by now. But Muhammad won that battle early and often. And if you have better footwork, and certainly if you have better footwork to the point that you're able to kind of instinctively predict where the other person is going, it makes up for a speed differential. It doesn't matter if the other guy has faster feet and hands if you're getting to the right spot first. And he did that especially throughout the first 2 rounds. I thought he looked sensational. I did like him mixing it up with the takedowns. A great performance for him.
Yeah. So he was leading the dance while backing up, which is, most of the time when we see a guy moving forward, you think they're pressuring, they're getting the fight they want. But it was Muhammad that was in control the whole time. Lyman Good had good moments. He dropped Muhammad. Muhammad ran into a punch that's going to happen when someone hits as hard as Lyman Good. But other than that little brief moment, like, I thought the commentators were making this fight sound closer than it was. I thought it was a pretty one-sided fight.
Yep.
When I look at Bilal Muhammad and his speed, his just agility, I see a low-level UFC fighter, but with his fight IQ and all the little traps he sets, he's like they call it setting traps. What he does, moving his feet, he's getting him to fall for what he wants. This makes him almost a ranked welterweight. And God.
Well, just, you make a really good point about fight IQ, because he gave the opposite impression when he got to the UFC. When he got to the UFC, the way he carried himself and the way his first couple of fights went made it seem like he was just like this all action, like crazy brawler. And I'm just going to be this dude who wins one, loses one for 16 straight fights, but collects a bunch of bonuses. But 2 of his first 3 fights were against Alan Jouban and Vicente Luque. All of their fights turned into like wild slugfests.
Yeah.
So when they started matching him with other of those same kind of action fighters, Randy Brown, Tim Means, he just totally outclassed him. Turns out he is actually like a smart and well-schooled striker.
Yeah. And I think if he fought Vicente Luque now, he'd do very well.
I agree. I don't know if he would finish him, or I don't know if he'd beat him, but I think he wouldn't get iced in a minute.
No, I think he would do that. That would be a very hard fight for me to pick. And I like watching Bilal Muhammad fight. I was thinking about this, I didn't pay attention to the corners, but I think Bilal Muhammad's still with Roufusport.
Yep.
The big name out of Roufusport is Anthony Pettis. They're both welterweights. If Anthony Pettis and his raw ability had Bilal Muhammad's fight IQ, you're talking top 3 guy in the division.
Absolutely.
Or the other way around. If Bilal Muhammad had, the athleticism that Anthony Pettis has, you're probably talking about top 3 guy. If you could blend those 2 guys together, you'd have like a perfect fighter.
Isn't that the way it always is, though?
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about who would he? I said, oh, well, the way I thought of this, I said, well, I did a little matchmaking. Who do I want to see Muhammad fight next? I'm like, well, I like to get it. He needs a name. He deserves a name. Someone low top 50. And I said, well, Anthony Pettis, that'd be perfect. I'm like, I think he beats Anthony Pettis. Then I go, oh wait a minute, they're teammates. So I'm going with Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar Nelson's got a little bit of a name. I think that'd be a fun matchup for Bilal Muhammad.
That would absolutely be great. And it would be a different look since Nelson is willing to strike and he's got an unusual striking game just because he is a karate guy and has that, that stance and that repertoire of strikes. But what he really wants is to get you down on the ground and take your back and choke you. And I'd love to see somebody push Muhammad in that direction and kind of see what he has.
Yeah. When I have a hard time picking who's going to win, those are the matches I love the most. Speaking of hard to pick, this is a fight that was driving me crazy. I chickened out. I was taking Jim Miller all week, and then I chickened out. And I got convinced that Jim Miller wouldn't be able to. I liked Jim Miller early, but I thought Roberts would be able to sustain the damage early and pull it off late. Boy, was I wrong. Jim Miller, this was the "you're not ready yet" moment of the night. Young prospect Roosevelt Roberts went against Jim Miller, got submitted in the first round by armbar. Jim Miller took down Roosevelt Roberts almost immediately. Roberts had a hard time getting to his feet. When he eventually scrambled, he found himself in an armbar. He made a mistake by he tried hammer fisting himself out. Then he tried just pulling out, and Jim Miller made an adjustment and tapped him. Not a lot to say. Big step up in competition going from Brock Weaver to Jim Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Worse that you did it in I don't know what the turnaround was, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, short enough that they bumped this up to 160-pound catch weight.
Yeah. It's one of these ones that the UFC matchmakers are gotta be kind of screwed either way. If Jim Miller wins, it's gonna be why would you give this young kid Jim Miller with his 972 fights in the UFC, a true veteran, the guy's fights all the time. He'll probably take another fight in 2 weeks because he didn't even get scratched in this fight, But if he wins, they go, why'd you give this old, that kind of has-been that's, just lost to Scott Holtzman? They were screwed no matter what they did.
It's so sad when the UFC just sacrifices their legendary. No, yeah. And the funny thing is, it didn't do much for either guy going forward for that very reason. Miller won, but on a certain level, he should have won.
He should win, yeah.
How much is it going to change how he gets matched up next? And same for Roberts. It means Roberts takes a step back, but lightweight is such a deep division that there's this whole kind of just piranha tank happening down there, where to even pop out of the piranha tank and have people start saying your name in connection with a top 15 ranking, you need to string together 5 or 6 straight wins. I mean, he had 2. They were against Brock Weaver, as you mentioned, and Alexander Yakovlev, that I'm not even sure if Yakovlev is still in the UFC. So it sets Roberts back a little bit, but he's still a super promising guy. He's still very young. He's still got a lot of gifts. So it doesn't hurt him too badly, and it doesn't do a whole lot for Miller other than a tidy check in his checking account, which definitely makes me happy for him.
Yeah, so you said it didn't hurt. I would say that this hurt Roberts more than it helped Miller.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
Well, just even so, like I say, there's so much you got to do to kind of pop out of that Shark Tank down there that it's not like he's a welterweight on a 6-fight win streak where one loss sets him back a year.
Oh, see, I disagree. I think it does. I think
okay.
Because of how deep the division, because there's so many guys. I think about a loss at, you have to stand out at lightweight, just as much as welterweight. I think about it using your animal analogy. When I bring my kids to the zoo, when I ask them what their favorite animal they saw, they're going to say a tiger, a lion, a giraffe, an elephant. They're not going to say the African snail in the, you know what I mean? He's in the African snail group now, or the blue toad in the aquarium tank. You have to stand out. You got to be an elephant. You got to be a panda bear. I don't know if that analogy works. It's late. It's 1:30 in the morning. These are the analogies I come up at 1:30 in the morning.
That's excellent.
And that's it for the main card. We're going to zoom through these prelims. We already mentioned his name. Bobby Green got a decision over Clay Guida. Pretty fun, entertaining fight. I had it 29-28 for Green. The only thing I wrote down for notes was I wish Green would throw more. Because to me, this fight was... I felt like Green was so much better than Clay Guida. Green fought the fight Clay Guida wanted and still won. He let Clay Guida be the busier fighter, which Clay Guida always wants to be the busier fighter. he gave him as many takedown opportunities. And Green showed great takedown defense, but he would, throw 2 punches, taunt him a little bit, back up towards the cage where Clay Guida could shoot a takedown. Clay Guida 5 years ago wins it easily. Just based on he had even more output and more hectic. He just wants to make it hectic, and Guida's just a little bit slower now, and he can't. The hectic style of Guida doesn't work as much.
It doesn't.
But it's still one of those Bobby Green, you could be good if you tried harder. Is that it? Is that as simple as that? Just try harder?
Yeah. Bobby Green is always the guy I bring up first as the number one member of my top list of scream at the TV fighters. I've spent more time screaming at my TV during Bobby Green fights than probably any other, fighter over the span of his career, just yelling, do something. No, throw a combination back, because he is the guy that he thinks he can win a fight by making you miss.
Who used to be like that a lot? Jorge Masvidal.
I was going to say Masvidal, Michael Johnson, and Bobby Green are the three who, they'll make you miss a couple times and then kind of grin and admire their own work. Or, if you hit them with something glancing, they've got to make sure and let you know that it didn't really hurt and you barely touched them, which you don't win a fight by making the other guy miss. It's like they watched, Muhammad Ali and they missed the part where he won the fight by hitting them back.
Yeah.
It looked cool that he made people miss, but he won by hitting them back. And
you don't win football games by having a good defense. You still have to score a touchdown. You got to score some points.
Having said that, this fight was better than I expected. I expected it to be just completely dreadful, because the thing for Guida is his wrestling kind of is the straw that stirs the drink. Even if he doesn't successfully complete a takedown, if you can get in on your hips and turn it into a 30 or 45 second sequence that wears you out, wears him out less because his cardio is so good, and that's 30 or 45 seconds that you're not punching him, it makes everything else go. Yeah. If he learns early on that he can't even try for takedowns, then he becomes this guy that's willing to just bounce his hair around and throw boxing combinations from 6 feet away.
Yeah.
It's just the worst thing in the world to watch. And when you mix that with Green, who's happy to watch the other guy miss, I was like, this could just be the worst dance-off in UFC history.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy that it was a good fight.
Yeah, but we did. I think was it Gray Maynard that Clay Guida had that fight with, or it was just that exact thing? He just ran away. It was just absolutely terrible. Last thing I'll say about this is just every time Bobby Green threw strikes, he landed. Just like you said, he didn't throw enough. But I said try harder to win, or maybe just don't try as hard to lose. He seems like he tries to sabotages himself.
He is gradually improving on that front, I feel. He's not as bad as he was 4 or 5 years ago at it, but it's still, low output, and just not recognizing the things that you normally need to do to win rounds is his biggest problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's bad as when he was going against Dustin Poirier. He was making Poirier miss, and he was taunting him about that.
Until he wasn't.
And then Poirier didn't miss. Speaking of did not miss, I don't know where I was going with this one, but Tisha Torres didn't miss much when she was fighting against Brianna Van Buren. Tisha Torres actually came in as the underdog and had her way with Brianna Van Buren, who had a similar feel that the Roosevelt Roberts wasn't ready. Had a similar feel to the first fight of the night, we'll get to, where I saw a fighter come in, seemed pretty confident, and then when one thing went wrong, I felt like utter chaos set in for Brianna Van Buren, and she kind of shut down. Tisha Torres, she fought at a very high volume. She had a lot of variety in her strikes, but it was impressive. She was adding the kicks to all areas of the body. But to me, I thought, even watching this, I still feel like Brianna Van Buren could have won this fight. I just felt she had a terrible strategy. She was taking the approach of sit back, all right, you do your offense. When you're done with your offense, I am going to clinch you. And the problem is when Torres unloaded her combination, she was done. Torres was already backing out, and then she was chasing her. Where I feel like she should have been pressuring forward, like she actually did in the beginning of the fight, pressure forward, crowd her kicking, where she eliminated the kicking game, and having her fight off her back foot, and she didn't do that. She was just doing like you're trying to catch a fly. Like she's sitting back and just swiping at the air, trying to catch a fly. And Tisha Torres was in and out and landing, and it's something we haven't expected much of Tisha Torres lately. She has lost to very high level fighters, but it was I before the fight I picked Van Buren to win, but I was pleased watching Tisha Torres get a really good quality win. She needed it.
She definitely needed it. She is an integral part of the of the UFC's strawweight division, and obviously has a direct connection to another fighter that might make it awkward to fire just one of them. But I think her last 4 fights, she was on a 4-fight losing streak. When you look at it, Jessica Andrade, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Weili Zhang, and Marina Rodriguez, that is up there with the toughest 4-fight gauntlets that any fighter in any weight class has ever had to undergo. It's completely ridiculous. You've got 3 champs and Rodriguez, who is still an undefeated prospect and is now up in the top 10.
Could be a possible champion with it. Yeah.
It's brutal. So I'm glad that she got another shot, because I worried that they might have let her go after the Rodriguez fight. But Van Buren fought almost the only fight that really lets her do Tisha Torres things. You already said it perfectly. But if you're, 5'1" and one of the smallest fighters in the division physically, almost the only way you can uncork that kind of offense is if your opponent lets you, and Van Buren absolutely did. She treated it more like a debate than a fight, where she was like, I'll take my turn to speak, and then you take your turn to speak, and we'll go back and forth in this kind of structured order. Whereas if she just kind of crowded her and bullied her a little bit, I don't think that would have happened. Van Buren had plenty of chances to win this.
Yeah, it felt like those when a striker does a drill where they hit in pads and then someone shoots on them, but without the shooting part, just like kind of grabbing them, and then you have to they do drills like that. That doesn't seem like. Well, let's get to the next fight. Low level fighters, so we kind of breeze through this one. Marc Andrade Barriault. I'm just, the French Canadian names. I'm screwing that one up. And Oscar Pichota went at it. Barriault, I thought, had a really good strategy. His strategy was that guy's a kind of precision, kind of technical guy. I'm a brawler, so let's turn into a brawl. He went straight at him. He had no respect for his power. He walked right through his punches, made it dirty the entire time. And Pichota, to me, he's not bad technically. When he was throwing, he was landing. He just lacks grittiness. And when I think of Pichota, every fighter needs a little bit of dog in them, if you get what I'm saying, and he doesn't really have it. The dog in him is like a lab, not a pit bull, not a Rottweiler, And I feel like Pichota would be a great person to teach a class. When he's in the gym and he seems like he could teach the class good. But
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was literally going to say, I don't have any direct knowledge on this. I don't have any inside line on where he trains, but I would not be at all surprised to hear that he's the kind of guy that just slays people in practice, but just doesn't have that other gear when it's an actual dude that wants to take his head off, in a fight for pay.
Yeah,
because I completely agree.
The king of light sparring. Is there anything else to say about this fight?
It was a loser leaves town match. Both guys were on 3-fight losing streaks, and in particular, Marc-Andre Barriault, he lost his only 3 fights in the UFC, and none of them were against super high level competition. So he gets another shot. Good for him. Hooray! Yeah,
good for him. Someone who could not make it 2 in a row and in the COVID era was Courtney Casey. She went against Jillian Roberts. People were torn on this fight, and I think it was really close in the betting lines. And it was one of those ones that I was shaking my head, why so many people were taking Courtney Casey. I was like, have you seen Courtney Casey fight? She has terrible wrestling, and Jillian Roberts is a pretty decent wrestler. I felt like I was, for a fight that was very close in the lines, I was very confident in my pick, and this is exactly how I saw the fight. I saw Jillian Roberts closing the distance, getting takedowns, winning. That's what had happened. She got in Courtney Casey's legs 3 times, got 3 takedowns, stayed on top the whole time. Courtney Casey, and this is the only thing I'll say there, then you can throw what you want. One, she showed no urgency when she was on her back. Like, no urgency to sweep, no urgency to, like, scramble up. She just kind of was like, I'll wait for an opening, then I'll throw up a submission. And what you just said about Pichota, like, not being where seeing him train, you don't really know what to get. I feel the same thing with Courtney Casey. I feel like she's someone who does a lot of jiu-jitsu, but she does it from starting on your knees. They do in jiu-jitsu class where they don't start from wrestling, they start on their knees. Right. And you roll to your back, and that's how I feel. I could be way off, but when I watch her, she plays jiu-jitsu in her fights, and to me, that doesn't work anymore. It's not 1993. You can't play jiu-jitsu anymore.
No, and a big part of the difference between how people from a jiu-jitsu background perform in MMA is how well they take to the wrestling. Jillian Robertson, I mean, you have to take into consideration the competition, but her wrestling looked fantastic. Mm-hmm. Just shot right through her hips like some like NFL like free safety and just plowed her down to the ground. And mm-hmm. It makes a difference. It makes a difference in the positions you actually end up with, when you're down there. And it makes a difference if the person just like landed hard on their back and got their brain rattled a little bit, and you have that like 1/10 of a second of advantage over them. So it makes a difference that you can get solid takedowns. Robertson absolutely did it. And I saw it the way you did. It was almost a pick 'em. Like, you could get Courtney Casey at like plus 105. Yeah. So she's just like by a hair, the underdog, but it didn't feel like a pick 'em fight to me.
Yeah. I'm not going to take anybody who has a decent wrestling game I'm not going to take Courtney Casey over anybody with a decent wrestling game. Oh.
Yeah.
The fight before that, Frank Camacho took on very short notice Justin James and Justin James' UFC debut. Let's talk about this fight. Of course, Justin James took the fight on Wednesday night, so of course we're going to give him a pass. When he missed weight. Oh, wait. It wasn't him. It was actually Frank Camacho who missed weight. Not the guy who took the fight on 48. No, sorry. He took the fight on Wednesday night, so like little over 48 hours. He had like 36 hours to make weight, made weight, and then he knocked out Frank Camacho in like 1 minute. Justin James, I pride myself on knowing the prospects, or at least I didn't know jack about Justin James before this. I didn't watch any tape study. I didn't have time, but I mean, what the people who have seen him, nobody was really high on him. No one was like, "Oh yeah, this is a good dude." And going back to that survivor pool, a lot of the guys in that league was taking Frank Camacho. Justin James knocked him out in a minute. I don't know what to say. He came out throwing bombs and he landed one.
That's pretty much it. This was the second. This is the second fight of Camacho's drop down to lightweight experiment. Because he came into the UFC as a welterweight, lost to some pretty good guys. It wasn't working. I think he was at 1-3 or 2-3 or something. Dropped to lightweight. He's like 2-5 in the UFC right now. I think Camacho's probably gone. Super fun guy, super nice guy, but he may not be UFC material at this point in his development.
Yeah, talking about super nice people, the nicest person in MMA. With all due respect to Sam Alvey and Sage Northcutt, but Roxanne Modafferi went against Lauren Murphy in a fight that actually has a lot of title implications. And who would have guessed that? Talking a couple years ago about Roxanne Modafferi and Lauren Murphy. But this is all I'm gonna say about this fight is like, don't look now, but Lauren Murphy's like pretty good suddenly. Like, she's got decent counter striking. She has a nice she has a good timing on right hand, but she does this like wrap around right hand, so it's not like a hook and it's not a straight. It's like a little click. She almost like curls it right at the end. She did really nice like step back right hands. Like when you draw the punch, you step back on your back foot and you spring forward off of it. Go back to that's like Joanna Jędrzejczyk's tool. She was using feints to draw out the attacks from Modafferi. She picked up her timing I'd say about 3.5, 4 minutes into the first round. Once she picked up Modafferi's timing, the second and third rounds were whitewashings for her. She actually shows some power, rocked Modafferi. I don't know what to say. Like, Lauren Murphy looks good.
She looks very good. She is a rapidly improving fighter, and Modafferi is a much improved fighter herself. I mean, she's such a different fighter than she was 8 or 10 years ago. But yeah, Murphy looks great. I did favor her in this fight, but just barely, because I thought she just squeaked by Andrea Lee. I thought she might actually have lost that fight. That was here in Houston, so I saw that one in person. I covered it for Sherdog. This, if not that, this is the best win of her career. And I would say this is the best win of her career because it's more definitive.
Yeah.
You know, she squeaked by Lee. If she had lost that decision, nobody would have blinked an eye. But she definitely beat Modafferi. And you're absolutely right about her figuring out the rhythm and the range on her. And once she did that, not only was she outstriking her, but it was affecting Roxanne's abilities to try to enter and get it on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
she was
like when you,
her.
yeah, like if you know that when you try to change levels or rush in and like force the clinch, you're going to get tagged, it gives you pause. So, yeah, great performance by Murphy.
Yeah, so she's on a 3-fight winning streak and won 4 out of the last 5 fights in the UFC. Good for, it's a girl that no one ever saw her be in this situation. So good for her. I mean, I know she's talked about all her demons she had in her life, overcome some serious things. This is a good story. Like, good for Lauren Murphy. That said, so Valentina Shevchenko is going to fight Joanne Calderwood. They booked that fight. COVID had it canceled. We're assuming when they return, that's going to be rebooked. If it's, I don't think it's been booked already. But if, say, Calderwood gets injured, Lauren Murphy has to be in the fill-in, no?
Yeah, I mentioned in something I wrote ahead of this card, like I was making fun of the fact that this fight was so buried on the card. I said, the winner of this fight is probably closer to a title shot in their division than anybody else on the card, except maybe the main event, and maybe not even that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, her next fight is either like a number 1 contenders fight or the title. So, hey, good for Lauren Murphy. And the first fight of the night, Austin Hubbard got a win by retirement when Max, I'm going to butcher his last name. I
think it's just Roscoff.
Roscoff, yeah. I didn't write it phonetically on the. I want to talk about Hubbard first, real quick. I just want to say Hubbard's just a guy. He's just a guy. Like there's nothing special about it. He's a card filler. Roscoff was a guy that came in with a lot of confidence. He was undefeated. And he went from having tons of confidence to 0 confidence pretty early in the second round. I actually gave him the first round, even though it was close.
Yep,
I had it
same.
I had it 1-1 heading into the round. He was gassed. He took the fight on short notice. He was gassed, and then he did a thing that I don't think anybody expected. Is he quit? He told us his head coach was giving him a big pep talk about going back there. You're a champion. Go out there. You're undefeated. You're the guy. And he said he wanted out. And so like one of the guys in Vegas, like Vegas commission guy, heard it, mentioned it to the referee. The referee came over to confirm. He said, "Nope, I don't want to fight anymore." I hope it doesn't haunt him. I hope it doesn't follow him. But it will. Like no matter, even if he goes on a run, wins the title one day, this will always be brought up.
And the unfortunate thing is that it's only going to matter because it happened in the UFC. The guy is 5-0. He's 25 years old. If not for this weird combination of circumstances that we're living in right now and that the sport is living through, he'd probably get 3 or 4 more fights on the local scene before even getting a call to the Contender Series or something. Because, yeah, it's a bad look, but you know what? If it were on the regional level, it'd be a curiosity. It would be you or me looking at Caro Parisian's record and being like, dude, what's TKO exhaustion in like his 5th fight? What the hell happened there? But because it happened in a fight that like nobody saw, like it didn't haunt him. I mean, we had to figure out that he was kind of a head case on our own, which we did, but it's not like that dogged him for the rest of his life. I hope this doesn't for Roscoff, because yeah, it's not a good look, but all the things that might be extenuating circumstances, just check all the boxes. And you never know how someone's going to respond to their first adversity. Like, this guy is a physical specimen, clearly a good grappler. I mean, the coach that was yelling at him was Robert Drysdale. So, yeah. I mean, this is probably the first time the guy's even lost a minute of a fight.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
His last four fights are all first round rear naked chokes, and his first fight was a second round rear naked choke. You suspect that he's probably completely run game on everybody he's ever met in a real cage, and he just faced his first adversity. Maybe he bounces back. Maybe he's not really for the sport, but I can't pile on him.
Yeah, he had moments in this fight. That's the thing that really said he wasn't getting thrashed. Like, he had a rough second round, but even then, because of his threat of takedowns, like, Hubbard wasn't trashing. It wasn't a 10-8 round. Like, he clearly won the round. But I mean, if he gets a takedown and some top control in the third round, he could actually win that fight. Mm-hmm. What was it? Unlikely? Yeah, the way the fight would go, and he probably wasn't gonna. But we talked about this a couple weeks ago. When I think about guys quitting, I always think about Robbie Lawler versus Pete Spratt, and nobody calls Robbie Lawler a quitter anymore. So you can change it around. Hopefully it does. All right, guys, we've covered all the fights. It's getting late, so we're gonna get out of here quick. Let's do the cut list first. You were throwing names out there. You said first one you said was Oscar Pichota.
He's obviously got to go. He's lost his fourth.
4 in a row, 4 stoppages.
4 in a row. Yeah. Against not great competition.
So you're nominating him. I agree. So see you later. Getting cut. Oscar Pichota. Frank Camacho. You're nominating him. He's 2-5 in the UFC.
Right.
2 losses in a row. He missed weight, and then he got knocked out in under a minute by a guy taking the fight in 2 days' notice. Frank is usually very entertaining. But yeah, sorry, dude. You're 2-5 in the UFC. Time to let him go. We'll make room for other guys. Do you have anybody else?
No, but I want to expressly put Marion Renault on the not cut list. I know that she's lost 3 in a row, but if she wants to be 43 years old and still at least giving UFC level bantamweights all they can handle, like, let her go and be an inspiration to us all. Yeah,
I think the division always keeps her around. I can't really comment on it as I didn't watch the fight. I did write her name down, but like I said, I didn't watch the fight yet. Bulls or Bears? Let's start on the positives. I'll go first, or do you want to go first?
Please go ahead.
All right. So Bulls and Bears. If you don't get it, Bulls and Bears are a stock market reference. When the stock market is going good, it's called a bull market. It's going up. When it's a bear, it's a down market. That's from the Bulls attack with their horns up. Bears attack with their heads down, I guess. All right, my number three. I'm going to go with groups. I got 3 groups. I'm putting them all together. So these groups, one, had good nights. Canadian fighters went 2-0. Jillian Roberts and Barrio. That was from my wife, who's also born and raised in Canada. Elevation Fight Team went 2-0. They had bookends with Curtis Blaydes and Austin Hubbard. And the other group, how about the love couple, Raquel Pennington and Tisha Torres? They are married, and I think they're married, right? They are engaged or married. I think they're officially married now.
I think they're married.
Yes,
yeah.
They went 2-0. So that's my number 3. Those 3 groups, I just put them all as the groups. Number 2, Justin James, 48 hours notice. No one ever heard of him. Gets a first round knockout. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to try to set up an interview with him this week. Hopefully we get that done. But my number 1, Josh Emmett. His stock is going through the roof. This is a guy that came in as an underdog. Not a lot of people were picking him to win. Got a great performance. I want to see him fight the champion now. So I'm not saying he deserves a title shot. It'll be a fun matchup. Who are your Bulls?
All right. So I only have 2 that don't overlap with something you had, but I will throw them out there. Number 1, wrestling. It is a bull market for wrestling. In several major fights of the night, the difference between a close fight and a not close fight was the person who had just better classic American style wrestling. Yeah. Just, was able to get in on the other person's hips, elevate them, dump them, and then do what they wanted to do.
Good
so
point.
good night for wrestling. This is, we're starting to get it back slowly for, Masvidal kneeing Askren in the head, because that wasn't a good night for the traditional, double leg shot. No. All right. And then the other is people with their back against the wall. Several fights were a win or go fight. I mean, even for somebody that is as universally loved as Tisha Torres, losing 5 straight would not have been a good look. She made it not an issue. Then Barrio versus Piahota. I mean, obviously both guys had their backs against the wall. They were both on 0-3 streaks, but they're both bad enough that there's every possibility that both of them might have got cut. Neither of them would have got a new contract. So good on Barrio for going out and not just winning, but winning in decisive enough fashion that those who make such decisions might remember it and be like, oh, you know what? That dude just went for broke and busted the other guy up. Let's, bring him back. So those are my 2, wrestling and people with their back against the wall.
Those are good ones. I like those. Let's go on to the Bears. These are people who did not have a good night. I'll let you go first.
All right. Number 1, oxygen. And the training that allows people to have sufficient oxygen in their muscles and organs after a couple of minutes of hard exertion. This may end up being a bear for as long as the world is in COVID land, because I can't express enough how much I'm seeing fighters clearly not performing at their best because of compromised training conditions. And it's not going to be like baseball's steroid era where you're just like, I wonder how many of these records, were just based on this or that. But I'm going to look back at spring, summer, fall of 2020 years from now and be like, man, how many of these wins, how many of these results were just from one guy being able to train almost like normal and the other guy, hitting like a duffel bag in his garage full of dirty clothes? How many of these are going to be losses because the fighter's own cornermen couldn't get out to corner him? How many people took a step up on short notice that in another world you would have been allowed to develop further on the regional scene? So it is not a good season for oxygen, and it showed again tonight. Even in the main event, I think fully trained Blaydes and fully trained Volkov, it's the same fight, but Blaydes probably finishes them.
Yeah, I picked the finish. Didn't have any other bulls.
I don't have any other bulls. That kind of occupied my whole mind tonight.
All right. I'll give you my 3 bulls. My number 3 bull, Frank Camacho.
Bears.
I'm sorry, Bears. I apologize. Yeah. My number 3 bear. I'm looking right at the word bear, and I'm saying bulls. My number 3 bear is Frank Camacho. I mean, like we said, get knocked out in 1 minute. It gets a guy taking the guy off the street. Not good. My number 2, Max Broskov. I mean, he did quit. It's not a good night for him. No. But my number 1 bear of the night, I'm going to go, it's going to be a 2-parter, Roosevelt Roberts and his Twitter. Because not only did he not have a bad performance, right before he tweeted to Michael Bisping saying, wait to see how good my performance is, and he got submitted in the first round. So not a good night for Roosevelt. I'm sure that tweet got retweeted a whole bunch of times now.
Well, hopefully he's taken the Conor McGregor class on deleting your tweets quickly when they don't age well. So we'll see.
All right, last one, guys. The grade. I'm gonna give it a B-. It the main event kind of fizzled out a little bit, but I was so rocking with the Josh Emmett Shane Burgos fight, and I was so rocking with the Belal Muhammad Lyman Good fight that I'm gonna give it a B-. There was no crazy knockouts, a couple fun submissions, but yeah, I'm gonna go B-.
Sounds like a B- to me as well. I enjoyed the main event more than most of MMA Twitter seemed to. I mean, people were just going off about oh, this is terrible, but I enjoyed it just fine. And anytime, a Guida Green fight is better than I expected and a Pennington fight is better than I expected, I got to give that a decent grade. So B- for me as well.
Yeah. I mean, was there a boring fight? It wasn't anything I was bored with.
No, I mean, if you were going to be bored by anything, it'd be the main event, in which case, go watch kickboxing.
Yeah, it might have been. I mean, maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, was there anything worse than the main event?
Nah.
I mean, Casey Robertson wasn't, exciting. Maybe. I don't know. Anyways, guys, there you have it. There is the most in-depth, comprehensive recap on the internet, as we have gone about an hour and a half breaking down all these fights. We'll be back next week for sure. We'll be doing the Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker card. Guys, stay tuned to the channel. We have a lot of things coming over here with our SureDog.com and Loudmouth partnership. But most of all, I can speak for Ben, all the people at SureDog, all the people at Loudmouth. If you are a father, happy Father's Day to you guys. And say happy Father's Day to your dads too. And Ben, you are a father. Happy Father's Day to you, my man.
Thank you, and to you as well, sir. I can see, at least some of your kids back there on the wall behind you, and they are a lovely bunch. And happy Father's Day, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, guys. Be back next week.